The most exhausting thing you'll ever do is spend 24 hours a day defending this version of yourself that doesn't actually exist. You wake up every morning and you put on this suit of armor that looks impressive to the world, but on the inside, you're sweating, you're shivering, and you're just waiting for that moment that someone's gonna notice that chink in your metal. This isn't just imposter syndrome in the way that people talk about at business seminars. This is a survival mechanism that's been running in the background of your life, most likely since you were a child. See, when you grow up without a father to validate your existence, like to look you in the eye and to tell you that you belong, you naturally assume that your presence is a mistake that needs to be covered up. And you believe that you are a guest in your own life. And at any moment, the real adults are going to show up and realize that you don't even have a permit to be here and that they'll kick you out. And you're living in this state of constant hypervigilance, scanning every room for the person who might finally see through the act and then call you a fraud. This fear of exposure is the invisible chain that keeps you from ever feeling truly safe, even when you're winning. The reason you feel like a fraud is quite logical, I think. You were never given the map, and yet you're being asked to lead an expedition. Imagine like being dropped into the cockpit of a 747 with no training, while 100 passengers are sitting behind you, expecting a smooth flight. You would be terrified and you'd spend every second maybe flipping switches and pretending that you know what they do and hoping the plane stays in the air by sheer luck. This is, I think, what adulthood must feel like for so many men who have raised themselves, because their fathers weren't there to show them how to navigate conflict, how to handle failure, how to love a woman, and you've had to make it all up as you go. And you've studied other men like an undercover agent studying like a foreign culture, and you might be mimicking their gestures, you might use their phrases, and even you might adopt their habits. But because these things aren't yours, they feel like a costume. And you feel like a fraud because on some level, you're still performing a role that you never really auditioned for. And the stakes of that performance feel like life or death. This fear of being found out creates a specific kind of internal noise that never stops. It makes you over-prepare for every meeting, over-analyze every text message, and replay every conversation in your head at night, looking for that one slip up that might have revealed your true identity as a lost boy. If you grew up with a ghost father who was never there, your imposter syndrome, I think, comes from a place of deep invisibility. You think that if your own father didn't even see you, then there must be nothing to see. You feel like a hollow shell, and you're terrified that if people get too close, they're going to hear the echo of your emptiness. If you had the angry father, your fear is more about safety, right? You learned that being noticed was dangerous. And so you perfected the art of being perfect so that no one would have a reason to look too closely at you. And in both of these cases, the result is the same, right? You're a man who is hiding in plain sight. Now, the problem with being a world-class actor is that you eventually lose the ability to know what is real. You become so good at managing people's perceptions of you that you start to value the image more than the integer, like that sense of being whole. You think that as long as people think you're a great husband, then you are one. As long as people think that you are a confident leader, then that makes you one, right? But the thing is, the gap between the image and reality is where that anxiety lives. That gap is, let's call this the integrity debt. And this is what you're carrying. And the interest on this debt is your mental health. You're terrified of being found out because you know deep down that you're living divided. You're living as a fraction. You're showing the world the numerator, the part that looks good, while hiding the denominator. And that's the part that is struggling and confused and still looking for a father's hand. This is the opposite of being a binteger. To be an integer is to be whole in your essence, where the inside of you matches the outside, and where there is no gap or for your fear to hide. And we see this show up most clearly, I think, in the workplace. For the unfathered man, a promotion isn't a reward, it's just a higher cliff that he can fall off from. And every time you get a raise or a new title, the voice in your head just gets louder saying, oh, they're gonna find out now. And it's gonna be hard for you to hide at this level. And you become a workaholic, not because you love the work as much as because you're trying to outrun the fraudulence. And you think that if you work maybe 24 hours a day, or even 20 hours a day to make it more realistic, you can stay one step ahead of the people who just might notice you're guessing your way through. And you don't know how to delegate because you don't trust anyone to see the messy parts of your process. And you have to be the one who does it all, because the moment you let someone in, well, you're afraid that they'll realize you don't actually have the secret manual for success. And so you're a high performer who is fueled by terror, and this is a recipe for the heart attack or total mental breakdown eventually, right? And this also wreaks havoc on your relationships as well. It's very hard to be intimate with someone who, well, when you're wearing a mask the whole time. Intimacy requires you to be known. But if you're terrified of being known, you'll always keep your wife or your partner at a distance. You might be physically present, but emotionally, you stay guarded. And you share the win, but you never share your struggles. You want them to admire the armor, but you'll never let them see the man on the inside. And this creates a lonely relationship for the both of you. They can feel that wall, even if they can't quite name it. They sense that you're performing for them, and it makes them feel like they're living with a stranger. And the irony is that the very thing you're afraid of being seen, is the only thing that can actually heal you. You're hiding because you think the truth will make them leave, but the truth usually the truth is the very thing that will make them stay. So, when we talk about shifting from a fraud to feeling a sense of wholeness, like that integer analogy, we aren't talking about becoming perfect. In fact, it's the exact opposite. Real manhood is about the courage to be perfectly imperfect. Real, rather than being perfectly fake. The fraud is the man who never makes a mistake. The whole man is the one who owns his mistakes. And when you finally stop faking, you realize that the reason you were so scared of being found out is because you were judging yourself through the eyes of the Father who was never there for you. You've been trying to please a ghost. But once you stop looking for that absent Father's approval, you can start looking at the reality of who you actually are, how you're designed. You can admit that you don't know how to do everything. You can admit that you are actually in the process of learning and growing. And when you do that, there's this beautiful, miraculous thing that happens, and that is the fear begins to melt and disappear. You can't be found out if you've already told the truth. Now, this transition requires this massive shift in how you view what strength looks like. See, in the fake version of manhood, strength is about never being vulnerable, right? It's about being this brick wall. But brick walls are brittle, and they crack and they crumble under enough pressure. Real strength like Binteger level strength is about being reachable. It's about being a man who can say, listen, I'm struggling with this, or I don't know how to answer that. And when you're able to say those things, you aren't revealing a weakness, you're actually revealing a foundation. You're showing that you're solid enough to handle the truth. You're showing that you don't need a mask to be valuable. This is the moment that you stop being a reaction to your father's absence, and you start being a response to your own potential. Think about the physical toll that this performance must take on your body, right? The tightness in your shoulders, perhaps, the way you breathe in a shallow, light way, the constant buzz that's in your nervous system. This is the sound of a man who's always on guard. Your body is in essence stuck in fight or flight mode, right? Because your brain is thinking that you are behind the enemy lines. It thinks that if you actually get caught, you're gonna die. But you are not in a war zone. You are in real life. You are in your home. You are with people that actually want to know the real you. You can actually give your body permission to stand down. You can let the air all the way into your lungs. The danger sense that you're feeling is just like that old memory from a house, a home where you weren't seen or where you didn't feel safe. You are a man now, and you can create your own sense of safety. And one of the most powerful things I think you can do to break that imposter trap is to find a group of men who are also done with that performance mode. When you sit in a room with other men and you hear them admit the same fears that you have been having, the power of the fraud is hereby broken. You realize that you aren't the only one who didn't get the map. You realize that you weren't the only one who's been winging it this whole time. This realization is incredibly freeing. It turns your secret shame into this shared reality. And instead of competing to see who can have the best mask, now you're collaborating to see who can have the best life. You stop being an island, and now you start being part of a continent. And you realize that being whole, being integer, like that sense of completeness is not a solo sport. It's actually a team identity. And as you start peeling off the mask, you'll find that some people that you spend time around will feel very uncomfortable. They like that perfect version of you because it didn't challenge them to be real themselves. So let them be uncomfortable. Your job is not to manage their feelings. Your job is to save your own life. You're trading a fake piece of what peace could look like for a real sense of what it means to embody it. You're trading a high stakes performance for low maintenance reality. And it might feel messy for a bit, like a construction zone, right? But remember, you have to tear down the old unstable structures before you can build the new one. The mess is really a sign of progress. It's a sign that the fraud is finally moving out and the man is now showing up and moving in. So this week, I want you to practice tactical honesty. Find one small thing that you would normally hide or spin to look better, and just tell the plain, unvarnished truth about it. If you're late for a meeting, don't make up a complex excuse about traffic. Just say, hey, I didn't manage my time well, and I'm sorry about that, right? If your partner asks you how your day went, and if your day was terrible, don't say fine. Tell them that you felt overwhelmed. Like these small acts of honesty are like lifting weights. They build the muscle of integrity. They prove to your brain that you can tell the truth and the world is not going to fall apart. They prove that you are pursuing wholeness and alignment. You are not a mistake. You're not a guest in your life. You are not a fraud. You're a man, a fellow human being who has survived a very difficult childhood with your heart and your ambition intact. And that's not a sign of failure. That is a sign of incredible resilience. You've done the impossible. You've built a life with no instructions available to you. Now imagine though what you can do once you stop using all of that energy to hide and instead start using it to build. Imagine the leader you will be when you aren't afraid of questions. Imagine the kind of partner you will be in your relationships when you aren't afraid of being seen. Imagine the father you will be when you can show your kids a map that is based on truth. See, this is how the signal gets clearer. This is how the static of the fake life begins to fade out. And this is how you can begin to hear the rhythm of a heart that is finally at peace. This is what it feels like to live in wholeness, to pursue being a Binteger, if you will. This is what it feels like to experience wholeness. So you spent long enough in the shadows waiting for a yes that was never really going to come from a man who left. Today, you get to give yourself that yes. You get to decide that the man in the mirror is the real deal, not because he is perfect, but because he is honest. The mask, you can leave that on the floor. You can take that armor off because you're standing on your own 2 feet. You're standing on solid ground. And you're just scratching the surface of what it means to live this way. So over these coming weeks, this month, we're going to be looking at the shame that keeps us hidden and the anger that we use as a shield. We're going to dismantle that old structure, that old house, piece by piece, until all that's left is the rock solid reality of who you were meant to be. It's going to be hard, but it's also going to be rewarding work. The most rewarding work you've ever done. You aren't just changing your mind, you're changing your legacy. And you're making sure that the man who you become and the men who come after you don't have to fake anything. You're, in essence, drawing a map as you walk your path. That tired feeling that you've been carrying this whole time, that's the feeling of performance being acknowledged and coming to an end. It's okay to be tired. It's okay to rest. The stage is empty, the lights are down, and you can finally just be. Because you're safe. You are real. You are enough. So let the frauds stay in the past. Your life as a whole individual starts now. So let's keep moving. Let's keep building. Welcome to the reality of experiencing your full manhood. Welcome to the work. I appreciate you listening. I'll see you in tomorrow's episode.